Welcome to Communicate with Confidence in Any Room. And today we are going to be talking about the C.A.L.M.S framework, 5 skills to ease your anxiety and engage your audience even when you're nervous. Because when nerves creep in, they're kind of like monsters under the bed. And they can leave you tongue-tied and searching for words in a meeting. They can leave you rambling in networking conversations when you're talking to new people and you see eyes glaze over. They can leave you rushing through important presentations as if it's a race to get to the end. Or they might cause you to avoid difficult conversations, all while a big mountain of resentment builds up. So whether one of these resonates with you, or all 4 of them resonates with you, put me in the chat. Yes, all 4. I see a lot of me's in the chat. So whether you're here because you want to confidently share your expertise, whether you want to get better at navigating conflict, or whether you want to feel more comfortable talking about yourself and raising your hand in meetings, you have come to the right place, because the framework that I'm sharing today is going to be so helpful to ease your anxiety and teach you how to calm your own nervous system so that you can still connect with your audience in high pressure situations. So let's do a quick poll to see who we have in the room. So if you want to give a presentation without losing multiple nights of sleep, raise your hand or put sleep in the chat. If you want to be able to negotiate salary without your voice cracking or lowballing your ask, raise your hand or put money in the chat. Yes, money. See you. Sleep and money. Great. Both. Yes. If you want to have difficult conversations without stepping on toes or chickening out, raise your hand or put toes in the chat. Yes, so Mary says all of it: sleep, money, peace, toes. Yes. If you're here because you're job hunting, put job in the chat. All right, so a few people are job hunting. If you're an entrepreneur, put biz in the chat. Yes, so someone says you're always job hunting, even if you're employed. Yeah, and that's a great way to go about it, because it means you can always be practicing for the perfect opportunity when it comes up. So now that we know who's here in the room, let me introduce myself for those of you who don't know me. I'm Madeline Schwartz, and I solve one problem that everyone in this room has in common. Whether you're a business owner or whether you're an employee, you need to be able to confidently articulate your message, tell people what you do, and explain why it matters clearly and concisely. And I help people develop the single most important skill in business and life. And communication is the most important skill because it affects every area of life. It affects our relationships. It affects our confidence. It affects our work performance. It affects our confidence in social situations and our personal life. And when you improve in one area, it improves your communication in every area. So that's the benefit of working on your communication. Before I started this business, I designed window displays, experiential marketing events, and retail environments for companies like Coach, Armani Exchange, Diesel, and Luxottica. And what I learned from that is how to get a message across in seconds. Before I did that, I was a book publicist, and I wrote press releases and placed books and authors in national media like the New York Times and Fresh Air with Terry Gross. And so I got really good at telling stories in just one page. But I wasn't always comfortable expressing those stories out loud. I used to be terrified of public speaking. I was good at connecting with people one-on-one or one-on-two, but anything more than one-on-three left my voice shaking, my heart pounding, and I would just be overcome with fear, completely paralyzed. And I constantly walked around feeling embarrassed and frustrated because I thought this was something that I should already know how to do. And the way I got over that fear is by mastering the C.A.L.M.S framework and the 5 skills I'm going to share with you today. So you can immediately take what you learned today and start shifting how you show up in your next meeting, in your next presentation, in your next difficult conversation. But in order to do that, what you first need to know is what you're doing now that isn't helping. So a few things that you might be doing that aren't working are staying up all night researching, writing and rewriting the same 5 points on your slides over and over, rehashing past presentations and ruminating about what you didn't say or what you wished you did say, living in fear about answering questions on the fly, beating yourself up about filler words or your voice shaking or any other nervous sensations that come up for you. These activities all sap your energy and your time because suddenly it is 30 minutes before that big presentation and you realize you haven't practiced. So you quickly read through your notes to yourself. Who's done this? Let's see a thumbs up in the chat. Anybody with me? Have you done this? Just completely run out of time? Yes, I see a lot of thumbs up. So the reason that none of this helps is because you are spinning your wheels on things that don't matter. You are focusing on perfection instead of progress, which is leaving you discouraged and feeling defeated ahead of time. And it's putting you into frantic energy where your nervous system is on overwhelm and it just shuts you down. And as a result, from all of these activities, you gain knowledge, but no practical experience. You stay busy, but you don't actually practice and feel prepared. And you never learn what works. So I had a client who works at a big food manufacturing company, and she had incredible fear about speaking in public and having to present to senior leadership. And one of the things that she realized in the course of us working together was how much time she was spending on things like stress eating before presentations. And when she realized how little that did to help her feel prepared and to lower her anxiety, she was able to stop doing that and instead swap in activities that actually helped and practice routines that she was willing to do. So here's how this class is going to work today. I'm going to teach you the C.A.L.M.S framework. If you haven't already, grab your paper and pen so you can take notes. I'm going to share how the C.A.L.M.S framework fits into my larger coaching process and coaching philosophy. And then I'm going to share how I can help you put this framework into action right away to shift your confidence in meetings, in presentations, in difficult conversations, in interviews, and at networking events. And then I'm going to answer all your questions. So be sure to stay on until the end because you have my ear today. You can ask questions about coaching. You can ask questions about something that we learned today or just a communication challenge that is coming up for you. So who's ready to jump in? Give me a thumbs up if you're ready to jump in. All right. Fantastic. So why C.A.L.M.S? A lot of clients come to me because they've been told that they need more executive presence, or maybe someone told them that they need more gravitas. So give me a me in the chat if anyone's told you that, or if you've thought that and Googled executive presence. Yes, I see me. Oh my God, this is what I'm looking to maybe go back to school for. All right, you are in the right place. Me, lots of me's. So the reason that I don't talk a lot about executive presence or gravitas is those terms can be elusive. They can be hard to define and hard to measure. And that's why instead I'm teaching you the C.A.L.M.S framework. 5 skills that are really easy to define. You're going to know what they all are, and they're easy to measure. And when you are feeling more calm, you're more present in your body. And when you're present, you have greater presence. You're able to engage with your audience, even when you're nervous. So notice, I didn't say that nerves have to go away. You're just going to change your relationship to them. So the C.A.L.M.S framework stands for curiosity, asking questions, listening, mindset, and stories. So let's jump in. The first skill is curiosity. And we start with curiosity because the neuroscientist, Judd Brewer, talks about how curiosity is this magical skill that can get us out of anxiety and into wonder. And so many of the people who come to work with me have a lot of anxiety around public speaking or communication in general when we start. And when we are in this heightened state of flight or fight or freeze, we aren't able to access our creativity and logical thinking. And tapping into our curiosity can reconnect us with those skills. So I'm going to tell you a quick personal story. I have a 9-year-old, and when my son was 6 and in 1st grade, we went through a really challenging parenting stint where there were lots of tantrums and he was constantly telling us that we didn't treat him well and that we were terrible parents. And this resulted in a lot of arguments and complete communication breakdowns because we'd get defensive and often say things like, if you only knew how well you have it. And what we were neglecting to see was his truth. So when we changed our strategy and took it as his truth, that we didn't treat him well, and we got really curious about that, we asked more questions. And when he told us why we didn't treat him well, he said, wait for it, it was because all of his friends got to take candy and cookies to school in their lunch. And we didn't let him take treats, and that was unfair. And we followed that up with another question of how he thought we should solve this. And his answer was that he wanted to take chips one day a week and cookies one day. So suddenly we were able to solve this problem that had been causing so much strife in our family. And we solved it in a 30-minute conversation with a completely reasonable solution, all because we got curious. So for everyone who's here today or the people who are watching this on the replay, I want you to think about a situation that you can solve that might be easier to solve with curiosity? And if you have one and want to put it in the chat, drop that into the chat. Yes, so someone says, me and my brothers didn't have candy for over 12 years as children, and it was the worst thing in our lives. Yes, so the thing that might not seem like a big deal to us can be the biggest deal and the source of many temper tantrums, child or adult temper tantrums, to the people who you are working with or living with or in conversation with. So curiosity is a very powerful skill. And if you think about this in the workplace, a lot of my clients get really frustrated with their employees or their peers or their colleagues when they express something or bring up an idea and other people don't understand their vision. So, just raise your hand or give me a thumbs up if this has ever happened to you, where you try to express yourself and other people don't understand. And what often happens when you're feeling really frustrated is that you point fingers at other people and you think it's their fault that they're not paying attention, that, it's their shortcomings, that they're not understanding this big vision. And instead, when we get curious, we can take responsibility for how else we might explain something, how creative we can be, and what else we need to say and the other person needs to hear in order to get on board with your idea. And so curiosity, and I saw a question about this in the chat, curiosity is a way to tap into more empathy. There's an article in the Harvard Business Review about the business case for curiosity in organizations and why it's so important, because it allows us to see other perspectives, to come to difficult situations with more solutions, and to think more creatively. So it is a way to exercise and build our empathy. And so are several of the other skills that I'm going to share. So that was skill number 1, curiosity. And it leads us into skill number 2, which is asking questions. Because when we are nervous, we often feel like we need to have the perfect answer or be prepared to answer any question before we start speaking. And we can get really defensive when people ask questions if we take it as a personal attack on us, and we think that people are trying to poke holes in our logic or make us look bad. And so instead, what I invite you to think about from now on is to just assume that people are asking questions because they're curious. And if they were just asking out of curiosity and not to try to make you look bad, how would you answer them? This can be a total game changer. So far, we've covered curiosity and asking questions. And skill number 3, actually, let me just take a quick sip of water. Skill number 3 is listening. So listening is the most overlooked and underrated communication skill. I think of it kind of like the forgotten stepchild of communication, and I'm a stepchild, so I can say that. If you get nervous about keeping the flow going in conversations, or if you spend a lot of time rehashing arguments in your head, I invite you to focus your attention on listening. And we're going to do a quick poll. So truth time here. I'm going to put a question in the chat for everyone to answer. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your listening skills? 1 being your ears are your best feature, and 10 being you love the sound of your voice. So put your number on a scale of 1 to 10 into the chat. 7, 5, 6, 3. 3. Yes. All right, so we have people all over the board. And here's the amazing thing about listening. You don't need to do all of the work. This is a misconception about communication. People think they need to have the perfectly crafted argument, perfectly, organized bullet points. And sometimes what they forget is that communication is a back and forth. There are 2 parts. There's speaking and there's listening. And if you don't have both, you are not communicating. So when you get good at listening, it can take a lot of the pressure off. So thinking back to the prior skill, asking questions, and this also goes back to the question about whether curiosity increases empathy, so does listening. Once you ask a question, give people the gift of your attention and listen to the answer. I can't tell you how many people miss this step. Yes, someone says in the chat, listening is something I am working hard on. And that, I am so glad to hear that. And someone else asked, can someone be a good and bad listener? Of course. If you think about communication in general, the environment you're in, the people that you're with, all of these things can affect your ability and your confidence to communicate. So in certain situations, you might be a stellar listener, and in others, perhaps with a spouse, you might be more inclined to defend yourself instead of listening. And this can be the hardest part for so many people because we speak at a faster rate than we listen. So it's easy to get distracted. And that's why I teach a concept called listening with all of your senses. Because too often people ask a question and then they answer it before anyone else has a chance, or they let someone start to answer but interrupt to tell them why they're wrong, or they spend the entire time someone is talking, rehearsing their counter response in their head. And if you're doing these things, you're not really listening. You miss all the important details when you're multitasking, when you're planning your to-do list, when you're typing or rehearsing in your head. And I had this freelance job for a few months where every meeting, every one-on-one that I had with my boss entailed me standing behind his desk, watching him file his email while we were talking. And it was so distracting. I could not have a conversation in this way. I never felt like he was really paying attention or that my challenges were heard in that situation. And when you're not listening, you can miss all of the details that you need and the things that the other people are actually looking for so that they can get on board with your idea and move forward in your conversation. So far we have covered curiosity, asking questions, and listening. And let me just take a moment to catch up on the chat. And so someone is remarking that people say I'm good at listening to them, but from my family, I only get that I am a bad listener and talker. So yes, it can be very situational. And thank you for sharing that example. Let's move on to skill number 4. So this is your mindset. And when I say mindset, I think of this as your thinking, your beliefs around communication. And mindset is important because emotions should pass through our body in 60 to 90 seconds, but we often get stuck on them because of our thinking, because our beliefs about a situation. And when we change our perspective and our attitude, it can change our entire experience. So I'm going to share something on my screen, and I want people to look at this image and pick an object that describes or relates to your mindset around communication. Yeah, so Karen says it looks like your desk. I can appreciate that. So I want you to pick out an object from this and think about how it can be an analogy for your mindset around communication. And then if anyone wants to unmute and share that with us, we would love to hear an example. So someone put in tax. Yeah, and I'd be curious, and you can unmute and tell us, or you can just elaborate in the chat. Why did you pick tax? I can imagine, but I'd love to hear in your own words. Who else picked something from this? Scissors. Yeah. So if it's scissors, I bet communication feels kind of sharp. All right, so tax. It reminds me of how my body feels when I have to speak in public. Yeah. So that's probably not a great feeling, and you might be kind of nervous and feel like you're, have to walk really carefully if that's your experience of communication and speaking in public. Karen picked the dice because it depends on the instance, the day, the mood, the random other variables, how good a communicator she is. Yes, I appreciate that. And that relates to what we were saying before, which is that communication is so situational. And so if anyone else wants to share, I think it was Ricky who picked the scissors. I want to give you a chance. And I see you put it in the chat, scissors, because you can be super sharp, and that can cut through anxiety, or you can get stuck. Yeah, and it's like when you're holding scissors in the wrong hand and you can't get anywhere. It can be so frustrating. And this is why our mindset around communication is so important. And it's a big part of the work that I do with clients in my coaching program. Because when you change your thinking, if you no longer feel like you're walking on tacks every time that you open your mouth to speak, or if you don't feel like you have the right-handed scissors when you're left-handed and you can't get anywhere in your communication, it can really improve your ability to get your message across and to confidently express your ideas. So earlier in the year, I was working with a managing director who was leading a new business pitch for her firm. And she normally played more of a background role in the pitches, but they were pitching to a women's institution. She was the most senior woman on the team, so she was leading this pitch. And we worked on all facets of the presentation, not just, streamlining what was going to go into the presentation, but also including more stories to personalize her approach. And the big thing around that relates to mindset was that we also worked on her really starting to embody and see herself as the leader of this team. And this was a big deal because there were two more senior partners that were part of the pitch, and she had to step into this role so that it was clear to the selection committee that she was leading the team, she was in charge of harmonizing all of their efforts. And as a result of changing her mindset and starting to see herself as a leader, they won this project, they won this new piece of business, and it brought in millions of dollars to the firm. So that's the power of mindset. We have covered curiosity, asking questions, listening, and mindset. And now I want to cover the final skill, which is stories. So the human brain is wired to remember stories. Stories connect, they delight, they surprise, they can spark curiosity. And they're really a great way to personalize communication and let our personality shine through. And I worked with the co-founders of an ad agency called Fancy and helped them put together their first conference talk. And that talk put their small agency on the map because they got really good at telling their story of why their work mattered to women and why it was so important to the industry to start showing and speaking to women over 40 in advertising campaigns. And that talk really launched them into the spotlight because it got them invited to speak at a number of other conferences. They've been on countless panels and podcasts and quoted in the press. And all of these opportunities have come to them because they got good at telling their story, and their story really connected with people. And the amazing thing about storytelling and communication in general is that there is a ripple effect. The benefits don't stop at you. They ripple out to all of the people around you. So for example, I have this client who works for the city of Portland, and she's a recruiter. And she came to me to work on her storytelling skills. And getting more confident telling stories and leading presentations helped her in the work that she does with all of the job candidates that she comes in contact with, and helps them feel more prepared and better equipped to interview for those jobs. And so that is really, when you think about communication, how the effects ripple out to so many people, really to everyone that we come in contact with. And our spending time investing in our skills in one area improves our skills in every other area. So those are the 5 skills. And I would, before I recap them, I just want to see who has really been paying attention here. And for anyone who can put all 5 skills in the chat first, you win a prize, a 20-minute free coaching session with me. So, put in the chat the 5 skills that make up the C.A.L.M.S framework. All right. Yes, curiosity, asking questions, listening, mindset, and stories. You are the winner, CG. And I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing your name right. Fantastic. So, C.A.L.M.S. And let me tell you why this framework works. It gets you to stop focusing on the things that don't matter. It gets you to stop fiddling with slides and fonts. It gets you to stop spinning in confusion and staying up all night. And instead, it focuses your attention on 5 skills that create connection and calm. And as I already talked about, the more calm you are, the more present you are in your body, the more connected you can be to your mission, and the more connected you can stay to your audience so that you can engage them. So instead of watching TED Talks the night before a presentation or frantically searching the internet for how-tos, come back to this framework. And remember what you need to confidently communicate. You need 1, curiosity, 2, you need to ask questions, 3, listening skills, 4, mindset, and 5, stories that capture attention. And when I work with my clients in my one-on-one coaching program, not only do you learn the C.A.L.M.S framework, which I taught today, but you also get a framework to tell stories in 90 seconds or less. And I help you build your archive of stories so that you can pull them out of your story library anytime you need them. And the results of having that story library and feeling confident to express yourself is that you develop this deep trust to navigate difficult situations. You're able to motivate and influence other people, and you build more trusting relationships with your team and your clients and the people around you. So those are the 5 skills that I wanted to teach today. And now we're going to transition from learning the skills to being able to apply them and access them anytime. So for anyone who's not interested in taking action, I invite you to drop off now. You'll get an email from me so that we can keep in touch. And for those of you who want to learn these skills inside and out and be able to access them in any situation, I want to share how I can help you do that. You can start using what I taught today to immediately add more flavor to your communication. But this workshop was really just the appetizer. And many of you are still hungry for dinner. So when I work with clients, we work together for 4 months one-on-one. And you learn the communication triad, message, mindset, and delivery, so that you always know where to spend your time. You develop a deep understanding so that you can really embody the 5 skills in the C.A.L.M.S framework, and you know how to ease your anxiety, how to calm your nerves, and how to connect with your audience. And you learn the experiment and evaluate cycle. And this gets you out of procrastination and past perfectionism and teaches you how to trust yourself. And because so many of my clients were getting stuck on writing their presentations and spending an inordinate amount of time creating presentations, I also created my signature guide to write and practice your presentation in bite-sized chunks. So it breaks it down to just 7 steps that you can do in 10 to 20 minutes a day so that preparing for presentations doesn't take over your entire life, so that you don't have to cram, so that you can get out of overwhelm. And it turns the whole process into something that's repeatable that you can do again and again. So my client Gary used this for his Creative Mornings talk. I have another client who used this process for her business of fashion talk. And my client, Linda, used this same process to ace 7 rounds of interviews, negotiate a title promotion, and a $12K raise. The program is called Amplify Your Voice, and it includes 4 months of one-on-one coaching. Just to recap, you learn the 3 parts of the communication triad, the C.A.L.M.S framework, and the experiment and evaluate cycle. And you get my signature guide to write and practice your presentation in half the time. And the next step, if you want to see if you're a good fit, is to book a consult with me. You should already have an email waiting in your inbox with a link to book a consult, but I'm also going to drop that into the chat so you have it right here. And I would love to take your questions about coaching, about the framework that I shared today. So start thinking about your questions, which you can put into the chat, or you can unmute yourself. And as you are thinking about your questions, I want to address a few common concerns that come up. So one is sometimes people are hesitant to commit to 4 months of coaching, or they might even be hesitant to book a call because that can seem like a lot of time. And here's what I want to share about time, that often we think that it'll be easier to find the time at some point in the future, when we finish a big project, when our kids are out of school, or when they're back in school, or once we take the licensing exam. But effective communication saves you so much time. It's kind of like that expression about how you should meditate 20 minutes a day, unless you're too busy, and then you should meditate for an hour. When I work with clients and they get more efficient in their communication, in their prep time, they're able to get their message across on the first try, it saves them hours of stressing, hours of mental processing time. And it really saves so much time and energy that then they can put toward other places. So I want to open it up to your questions. Yes, feel free to put them into the chat or unmute yourself. Thanks for joining, Carrie. Mary, great. I look forward to talking to you when you book a consult. And before people are dropping off, you're welcome to unmute and share your question, but I also encourage you to share your top takeaway from this class. And by sharing it in writing in the chat, it allows you to cement those learnings and share it with the group. Yes, Mary, you are welcome to unmute if you want to share that out loud.
So I think the point that is really sticking with me is the point that you made earlier about nerves, that you don't have to get rid of the nerves.
Can't hear you, Mary, if you are speaking. So you might need to check your microphone, but you can also put your question into the chat. All right, well, let me cover one other common question that comes up for people that I talk to, which is that they're hesitant to invest in coaching or even investigate coaching because they have invested in other classes or trainings or coaching, but they haven't followed through. And I get it. If there are other places that you haven't followed through, of course, it seems like a waste of money to invest in coaching. But if you want this result, if you want to feel less anxious communicating, if you want to stop losing sleep before presentations and difficult conversations, the first thing that I will teach you in coaching is how to trust yourself to make decisions. And I've worked with people at all different levels, different industries, and at different points in their career. And I've helped them all make communication simple. And the beauty of working together for 4 months is that you have time to implement. We don't just work on one presentation or one meeting or one difficult conversation. You learn the tools, you get to experiment with them, and then come back and evaluate them. And you have the opportunity for all of your mind blocks to come up in this time and for us to be able to work through them together so that you get the biggest return on your investment. So, who has a question that they would like to ask? And I see Mary shared her takeaway in the chat that you do not need to get rid of the nerves. You can change your relationship with them. Yes, it is such an important distinction that gives you so much power when you can normalize feeling nervous and not let it throw you off. All right, so I see a question in the chat. Yes, in 4 months, we meet 8 times like this on Zoom, where we get to dive deep into your specific communication challenge, whether it's a presentation, a difficult conversation, or a meeting. And we get to work on that together. And then you get to try out the skills that you learn in our time together and then come back and evaluate them. So it cements your learning. It teaches you how to process any negative emotions that you feel, how to build more emotional resilience around failure, and to really increase your momentum and learn so much faster. Yes, this program, Amplify Your Voice, is one-on-one. So it is highly personalized. It's not a video program. It's not a course. It's where we meet together, the client and the coach, and we work together on your specific challenges. Oh, I see one question that came through to me in the chat. So what should you do if you find yourself rambling or over talking? This is a really common problem that comes up. And in my coaching program, when we work together, you learn how to calm your nerves and ease anxiety so that these nervous habits don't completely take over and derail you every time. And that you know how to recover when things do come up. So that if you're rambling or getting really excited and over talking, you can quickly recover from those stumbles. And you will also master the communication triad so that you get really clear on your message ahead of time so that you know how to deliver it to your audience in a way that's going to be relevant and engaging, and so that you develop the mindset that is going to support you in your communication instead of undermine you. Yes, so I see a comment in the chat. I think of all the other programs I've heard about, this might be the one I have been looking for. Fantastic. And yes, I'm happy to talk about all of the details, including pricing on the consultation. So I look forward to talking to you. Any other questions that you want to ask in these next few minutes? Great. I can't wait to talk to you, Mary. Jakara, I want to give you a chance to ask your questions. If you have a question about coaching or about the C.A.L.M.S framework that I talked about today. And as we wrap up, I just want to recap again that when I work with people in my one-on-one coaching program called Amplify Your Voice, you learn the communication triad, which are the 3 pillars to building your presence and communicating clearly and concisely in any situation. You learn the C.A.L.M.S framework to ease your nerves and engage your audience. And you learn how to experiment and evaluate so that you don't get stuck in that other cycle that is keeping you stuck, which is perfectionism and procrastination. So that's what I have for you today. I am so glad that you joined me for this class on C.A.L.M.S communication and how to communicate with confidence in any room.